Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1GV, Whiskey 1 Good Vibrations, with another little ham radio tale story for you. Dates all the way back to 1977, when I found a job in QST magazine. That job was for W1AW operator. Now, I had just graduated from the University of Minnesota with a degree in mathematics, and more than likely, were it not for that advertisement in QST, would have ended up in some technical field, probably technical writing of some kind or another. Maybe I would have gone on to graduate work and become a college professor. God have mercy on my students should that have happened in mathematics. But as it was, I saw this and I said, this sounds like the coolest job. And I applied. It was the only job I applied for. It was probably January 1977, about a month after I graduated in December of 1976 with Bachelor of Mathematics degree. There you have it. That's the extent of my education. Enough to be a teacher, not enough to be a professor. A lot of people call me professor, and I don't mind, but I'm just a teacher. Maybe not even that good a teacher, but besides all of that stuff, I saw this ad. It's the only job I applied for. And I got it. And I went out there, my mother and I drove out all the way to Connecticut from Minnesota in February, and fortunately did not encounter any foul weather along the way. And I remember as the states went by and things changed, and they really got different when you got into eastern Pennsylvania. That's when things really started to change. And then we got back into Connecticut, and it looked a little more like Minnesota, except bigger hills. And we got to the station, we got to the interview to introduce me to all the people there. And the chief operator at that time was Chuck, W1 Whiskey Papa Romeo, and his other assistant was Chris, W1EH Whiskey 1 Echo Hotel. He was one of those who got vanity call sign during that time when they were being issued, and I was WA0 Ocean Kilo Victor and got W1 Golf Victor, technically, and put that on my license plate, and I went and I worked the night shift 4 days a week, and they were weekdays, so they were weekends, so I had 3 full weekdays off every week, and to me that was just priceless, because I could do all the kind of things that most people can't do, and then I could do a lot of the things that people don't find themselves compelled to do, like work on weekends. But it was a cool job. It was pretty easy going, pretty easy, and the pay was just above minimum wage. I lived with a couple other hams in a place called the Home for Wayward Hams, 90-foot tower in the backyard, and these other guys were, one of them was another Midwesterner, and another one was from New Jersey, and I believe he's still associated with QST in some way or another to this day. But in any case, as things went on, I found the job not challenging for a mathematics major. You might think just attending to these radio transmitters was not challenging, but it was a heck of a lot of fun. There were 4 or 5 great big radio transmitters in the center of the room, and they all ran off vacuum tubes. I think a pair of 3-500Zs for each one. Back then, the legal limit was a kilowatt of power for CW and 2 kilowatts PEP for SSB. They expressed things a little differently then in terms of power, and they were talking about power input, not power output. So your plate power input could not exceed 1,000 watts CW or 2 kilowatts PEP SSB. They had a 6-meter and a 2-meter transmitter, and they all went at the same time, and my job was basically to make sure that the code practice and bulletins in various modes went out on time on all the frequencies that they were supposed to go out on. And I don't think I ever really had a major blunder there. I do remember getting a little nervous with one of those big transmitters. Suddenly the meters stopped kicking up. I got a little nervous because I'd really never worked on a transmitter that big. So the first thing I did to the doggone thing was give it a good swift kick. And wouldn't you know it, came right back on again. A couple times that happened. That was the extent of the repairs I had to do, other than climbing the 120-foot tower that they had out there with two stacked 20-meter 4-element Yagis, one at 60 feet, one at 120 feet, and then a 3-element full-size 40-meter Yagi at 90 feet, all fixed and aimed in the direction of San Francisco, which would provide optimal coverage to all of the United States. It was the average direction to cover the United States. They had a dipole for 80 meters, a backup dipole for 40. We used a big, long dipole for 160-meter transmissions, various VHF antennas, and all kinds of things, an antenna farm there. The 10-meter transmitter was down in the basement and operated off of a 250th vacuum tube, which looked like sort of like a 200-watt incandescent light bulb with a little thingy sticking out of the side. I forget what that thingy was for. I think it was the plate lead. It stuck out of the side, and the filament glowed as bright as a, well, you know, a white hot 25-watt light bulb maybe. And all these things. We had visitors, and I remember one of my great delights was getting on 40 meters from W1AW as an operator and running 2, count them, 2 watts plate power input to that big old Yagi and creating a pileup, because W1AW was a sought-after call sign for most hams. Well, eventually I found an opening in the technical department there at QST magazine, and I guess the rest is history. A couple of winters there in Connecticut convinced me I didn't want to live there anymore. One was the winter of blizzards, when for a while it looked like scenes out of Dr. Zhivago, and the second one was the winter of viruses, when I was laid flat on my back sick with influenza viruses and their variants. 5, count them, 5 times. And I decided, I'm a young guy, I like the beach, I want to be a beach bum, I'm going to go to Florida and be a beach bum. So I found a technical job with a company in Miami. But W1AW is a pretty good size building, and it's arranged doubtless much different now than it was then. The code practice went out on this perf tape. Remember those reperf machines? You had to type it all up in there manually and then run it through that thing. And you had to answer the phone occasionally, even during thunderstorms when it rang by itself with nobody on the other end. That was W1AW then. W1AW now is a little more high-tech. They're a little less historic in terms of their equipment, a little more highfalutin, I guess you might say. But their job is still the same. Their hours are not as long or as great as they were when I was there. But the times of the code practice and bulletins on CW were still the same. And I remember them to this day. Stan Gibilisco, Whiskey 1 Good Vibrations, signing off from somewhere far away from Connecticut now in a much different type of country. Until next time, 73, and so long. Bye.